Richard Gage, AIA.
Welcome, everybody. This is the press conference of the Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth.
Thank you. September 11th, 2001, the most scrutinized day in history. But 8 years later, there may be more questions than ever.
36% of Americans want a new investigation of 9/11. It's not a fringe phenomenon.
He's an architect experienced in steel structures. Now Richard Gage is touring the country with a controversial message about September 11th.
Richard Gage is here to show us why he's calling for a more thorough investigation into the collapse of the World Trade Center buildings.
We should be exposed to the truth at both sides, because we're going to be making a difference. We're going to be the politicians, we're going to be the engineers, the doctors. So we shouldn't get stirred up in all this media, and we should, go for the truth, and we can make a change.
Here's a controlled demolition on the right. World Trade Center 7 on the left. Is there any similarity? Is there enough similarity to warrant an investigation into the possible use of explosives?
People don't want to accept a fact that kind of might change their whole paradigm.
The entire subject just faces a conspiracy of silence by the media.
It's not something you read about in the newspaper. It was all covered up, and I want to know more.
I was kind of shocked that we didn't really hear about it.
100 first responders talking about sounds of explosions, flashes of light at the onset of each of these collapses. NIST, the National Institute for Standards and Technology, was tasked with explaining these collapses to us. And they came out and said, well, we found no evidence for explosives. Later they acknowledged that they never looked for it. How can you find what you're not looking for?
So I had my own reservations, but I didn't have the hard data that Mr. Gage presented, and that really pulls it all together for me.
Very compelling, very captivating, and I believe that the student body at the University of Maryland benefited a lot for having me here.
Most architects and engineers who look at the DVD or see this presentation end up agreeing with us and signing our petition.
I really think you should check this out and find out what's behind the scenes.
But fire would have brought the building down asymmetrically, not straight down through the path of greatest resistance. Let me make one more point. Sure. In order to bring a building straight down, you have to cut all 24 core columns, in this case, within a fraction of a second of each other.
The basic physics of it stood out to me as being very important.
And wanted to know if this was legit. Heard so many conspiracy theories through the years.
This is not about belief, this is about facts.
And the information was very clear and concise and thought-provoking.
A lot of the things I learned were basic structural analysis. And, a structure doesn't fall that fast under normal circumstances.
Seeing this makes me wonder what really happened.
Because this information is not available in mainstream media. It's not available in the official reports that came out by FEMA, by the 9/11 Commission report, by NIST.
No matter who did it or how it occurred, I think, the truth should really be out there.
I was in shock the morning of 9/11. We had never seen a high-rise building collapse at all. I mean, there's been 100 high-rise fires.
Oil and fuel doesn't heat up to the same amount of temperature that can melt steel. It takes thousands of degrees to melt steel.
You go into the actual physics of what happened on the day, and you look at different testimonials. And if you're concerned about our foreign policy and how that influences the world.
I mean, we went to war over this, so I feel like people should be informed. I mean, how do we make informed decisions unless we know the whole story?
I think the biggest thing is that it promotes critical thinking.
So much evidence that it couldn't, that something else had to help the buildings come down.
At the last few seconds, he took his hand off, and you heard 3, 2, 1.
Do fires bring buildings down to countdowns?
9/11 has a lot of cover-up behind it. There's a lot of things about the incident that never really made sense when it actually happened.
The fact that the BBC was reporting it, that's 45 minutes ahead of time, that's insane.
It turns out that if you had access to the elevator hoistways in the building, you would have access to the columns and beams.
I think it's important for the students to know the full truth.
I think they would be good speakers for our campus and to let people know about what's going on in these facts.
And just some of the facts that were presented were pretty powerful.
It's imperative for everybody to do their own independent research to make up their own mind.
You really need to see true source material.
The stigma that there is in our society, right, against people who kind of want to stand out against the grain and say something that's perhaps unpopular. I think there's a big stigma, especially in American society.
Being patriotic is to question.
And I thought the 9/11 explosive event was very interesting, and it gets students to kind of think about what's going on and to formulate their opinions based upon the facts that are given.
It's entertaining and yet very serious and to the point.
It was very inspiring to me.
To show other students there is something suspicious about this case.
And if you look into the facts, you will see that these answers that are given don't add up.
If we want to preserve the integrity of the foundation of our country, people need to know and have access to information that reveals the truth.
Worsening financial crisis, more loss of liberties, we become a whole lot less safe. Whereas the truth about 9/11 pulls the rug out from all of these lies. It's not too late to discover where you draw your line in the sand for you personally. Do you wait for the next 9/11, predicted by members of our Congress and the media to be far worse than the last? The time comes when our silence is betrayal.